Hi everyone, welcome to the ACI's brand new webinar series looking specifically at the toxicology consortium that we have used to help companies through the regulatory process in the UK. I'd like to welcome you today. It's a great honour to be joined by Dr. Parveen Bhatarah, who is the Chief Scientific and Regulatory Officer at the ACI, and Dr. Paul Duffy, who is our Chief Toxicologist. So these two are really the architects of the ACI's consortium approach. And it's an absolute privilege to have them on today to talk, really to address the main issues that were raised when we put out on social media what questions we wanted you to ask. And you came back in full force, gave us lots of good ideas. And so we're just going to jump straight in. It's going to be a quick, short, sharp kind of thing. Going to be very conversational. And we hope that if we don't manage to answer any of your questions today, please get in touch and we will be able to help you out further. So without further ado, I'm just going to jump straight into the session. So, Paul, I think we'll direct this question to Parveen first, actually. Now the ACI has received validation for their products. We're in that kind of post-validation stage. Could you briefly summarize up until this point what the novel foods process has looked like in the UK?
Hi, Tom. Thank you for having me. Novel food application process is actually a very simple process. In layman's terms, I would say that it consists of three key parts. If you are submitting a novel food application here in UK, we are still following the EFSA's really portal, so no changes there. The same portal is being used for the novel food application. The first part is literally administrative part, your company and the product, and the second part is really a process related, product related part, which covers all the details regarding your product, the supply chain traceability, the proposed product safety information, toxicology information, ADME, and proposed dose and nutraceutical information. So that's really the part two. And part three is again the abbreviations used in and any scientific reports which have been submitted to support this particular safety or the toxicology or the stability, any of that data. So scientific reports are in the part three. So it's a fairly simple but very comprehensive process.
Okay, great. Thanks, Parveen. So initially, the FSA set out quite clear guidelines and timelines for when to expect and product validations and when they thought that, well, when they told people to submit their applications by. So now that that initial deadline was on the 31st of March in 2021. So a year later, the first kind of iteration of the public list was released. 3,500 products. That's now gone up to 12,000 products. But since then, it's a year later now, and we've received validation. So what does that really mean in real terms for companies that are using the ACI's data and that are part of the ACI's consortium?
That's a very interesting question. Yes, it has taken a long time, but we have to bear in mind that Brexit happened and there was COVID, and companies submitted at least the information, and most of the companies who were working in this space, especially in the CBD sector, they were not from that knowledge base that sort of comprehensive data they will have to submit. And on top of that, the safety and the toxicology information which was required. So ACI set up the toxicology consortia to help the companies on with this data. And this data has been now submitted last year to the FSA, the regulatory authority in the food sector, and that data was reviewed. It took time. We submitted the data actually in actual tox data in last May, but it took that much time until now for them to actually come to a review to say data hasn't been fully risk assessed, but data has been reviewed that it meets that standard what FSA was requiring that data should be. So now the application has been validated. application validation means literally in layman's terms, if you want to say, people say, oh, it's a tick box exercise that yes, you have submitted all the data, what was requested by the FSA. But it's a little bit more than that, because it's not FSA haven't just accepted the data that you have submitted. Yes, there is some folder to support the toxicology data, but they have actually taken effort to go through, does it fit all the requirements, what they were looking for in the data. So that's the reason why it has taken a little bit longer than what we were anticipating. Although, yes, I agree, it's a tick box exercise, but it's going through the stepwise manner to ensure that it's covering all the data, what is required. So that is what the validation means.
Okay, great. Thanks, Parveen. So Paul, now I'm going to turn to you, really. Obviously, it was clear from the outset that the data was required by the FSA, because they said right from the beginning that the Epidiolex literature was not sufficient to address all of their claims. So could you give us a little bit more information about the tox study itself? What does it actually show, and how does it help companies that use that data?
Sure, no problem. You know, it needs to be appreciated that the FSA has a legal and ethical regulatory requirement for novel food applications and ensuring safety to the public, you know, and that's for any novel food application. CBD is no exception to that. So following their guidance, and we had many conversations with the FSA, we conducted a body of work, of which there are several studies in that, several pieces of work, but perhaps the key piece of information is what's often referred to, and you may have heard this, is the OECD 408, which is a general toxicity study in rodents of 3 months duration. And the data from that study has been submitted, as Parveen has explained, to the FSA, and they've, from a scientific quality viewpoint, they've assessed that meets the need of a novel food application in terms of further evaluation. Now, that's got to go into their scientific advisory committee, but for now, we certainly meet the general requirements. And interestingly, you know, our view on this is the output of that study in combination with the other pieces of work that we've done is entirely consistent with what the FSA's position was at the start of this process. And they had a position based upon support from the Committee on Toxicity of what would be continued to be considered as an acceptable daily intake for CBD. And we're entirely in line with that, we believe, but nevertheless, it will need further evaluation from their scientific committee.
Okay, great, thanks. So obviously what we're talking about currently is CBD and toxicity, but in relation to food products and food supplements. Do you think that the ACI's data could be helpful in clinical circles? So one of the first steps traditionally for clinical trials is to prove a safety level of whatever the main API might be, for example. So do you think that the data that the ACI has generated could be helpful for some companies trying to move?
Sure. No, that's a really interesting question. My background is in the pharma industry, so I'm very familiar with what might be required to support clinical trials. And yeah, you're absolutely right. The work we have done with ACI is targeted to CBD in food. Nevertheless, I think, as I mentioned earlier, the study type that we conducted is referred to as an OECD 408 design. Now, that OECD guidance and design is not only acceptable to FSA, it's equally acceptable to more clinical-based pharma or medical regulatory authorities around the world, including the US FDA, our UK MHRA, and Europeans and other territories as well. So it meets the requirements for clinical trial support as well as food standards support. And it will contribute to the growing body of knowledge for CBD. So it's probably not the right forum to talk about what this means for clinical trials, because it's a different kind of process and a different kind of application, but it's certainly supportive of clinical trial development and will contribute to a growing body of knowledge of CBD in that sector.
Certainly, both me and Paul comes from the pharmaceutical background. We are not from the food sector background, but having generated that data, which is suitable for pharmaceutical industry as well. But I think it forms a real basis for any other evaluation which pharmaceutical industry or companies are pursuing for the nutraceutical or the pharmaceutical development as the end product. This could form the basis for their further clinical trials, and they could save a reasonable amount of time. But that's, again, as Paul said, this is not a right time to discuss in this forum, but for some other time.
Okay, great. Thanks, Parveen. Well, after that little detour, let's cut straight back to the food industry then. So tell me, what do you think happens next? I mean, the ACI has now received validation for its RP126 and 127. Tell me, what are the next steps for companies that are utilizing the ACI's data?
Yeah, no, I think I touched on it earlier, and I will expand on it now, and Parveen can input as well. We have provided the data. At the moment, the FSA as a body, a regulatory body, has not commented on how that data will support a novel food application. My understanding is the information goes to their internal expert scientific committee, who will evaluate that, as they do all novel food applications, with supporting information, and they will come to a judgment, which will they then communicate back to the main FSA body, and then there'll be a judgment on whether CBD containing products that we're supporting can proceed to the authorization phase. But I mean, Parveen, you can add to that. You probably know the detail more than I.
Yes, I think, Paul, you're absolutely right. But as we are using the EFSA's portal, as I said before, the process is very clearly laid down by EFSA. According to that process, after the validation, the application goes through the risk assessment stage. Risk assessment doesn't take that long, but then after the risk assessment, EFSA has to base their opinion. When they base their opinion, that means they have to go to all the states in EU to make sure that they are accepting that the decision, what is coming from the risk assessment stage. But after that, it goes to the EU Commission, and then PAFF, which is a Plant, Animal, Food and Feed Authority, makes the final decision, and then the applications are authorized. However, now post-Brexit, we are now on our own, but using the same portal from EFSA. Whether the process should be quicker, in my view, it should be quicker, but there is no information yet from FSA whether it will be quicker or not. So wait and see.
So can you give us any guess at when we could expect product approvals and authorizations?
Well, I think it would probably be premature to make a guess. We are in dialogue with the FSA to try and understand their processes. And as Parveen has pointed out, although we're now separate from the EU following Brexit, we are assured by FSA that they will be following parallel type procedures. But they've yet to tell us when they anticipate coming to some decision. So I guess is probably not right, in my opinion, at this time. But watch this space, and you know, we will communicate as an institution, the ACI, whenever we have any more information to update.
According to EFSA's guideline, it should take no more than 8 to 9 months to go make EFSA's opinion.
Indeed.
And after that, it should be very quick and application should be authorized. But don't forget, this is just a guideline. Each individual application is going through its own merit. What are the quality of those dossiers being submitted? So you can't really say that this is generic, but each individual application will have their own time.